don't take the contract where they negotiate you down, because I've had that. And I took those contracts initially, like you were saying earlier, because I didn't have the reserves I had this last year to get me through and whatever else. And it was like, oh shit, I'm out of work. I need to take something. But the companies that negotiated me down and all the rest of it were micromanagey as fuck.
Hi Laura, welcome to the HoLT Survival Guide for Small Businesses.
Thanks.
Lovely to finally meet you in person. Oh my gosh, even if my dog, who has sat on my lap for every single episode of this podcast, has abandoned me in favour of you. I think he's
I was going to say he's only human, but you know what I mean.
He basically could be human. He's better behaved than most of the humans we've had on this podcast, to be fair. So we've known each other for a fair few years now.
We have.
3, 4, maybe
something like
years. This is the first time we've actually finally met in person, which is so lovely. But why don't you tell the listeners, the watchers, what it is that you do? Because there's a bit of a variety.
There is a bit of a variety. So I'm mostly known for my ERP work.
And let's talk about what is an ERP? What does that stand for?
Yeah, no, see, that's where it gets interesting, because it actually stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, which is
boring.
The wankiest term in the world ever, and has no real bearing on what they are to a degree. So even most companies that use ERPs don't refer to them as using an ERP. They tend to refer to them by the brand that they use. So if they use IFS, Salesforce, SAP, Workday, that kind of a thing. So one single platform that they can run their entire business on. They tend to be modular packages too. So you can buy them if your business has an engineering and manufacturing firm, maybe a project bit, you're going to need finance, you might need HR. You can bolt on the different modules that you need when you need them, that kind of a vibe. With the idea being that it's a fully integrated solution. So if you're in sales, your information automatically passes through to the finance team or to the manufacturing side or whatever you need. So you end up with a single version of the truth where everything talks to each other. And ultimately, you can get reports nice and easily out the back end that tell you what you need to know to actually run your business and make decisions from it.
And you unfuck people's ERP systems.
I basically do, yeah. Because what you tend to find is, because a new ERP is a fairly chunky investment from most businesses. I mean, you are talking multi-million spends, basically. And that's just on the initial outlay. That's not even the year-on-year operating costs of it. What tends to happen is that businesses stick with their legacy system for as long as they can, to the point where it's generally out of service. It's not supported by the manufacturer anymore. There's no more releases coming for it. They've had to buy Christ knows whatever software along the way to kind of put a sticking plaster and get some extra
all together over the years. And
because they didn't have a projecty thing, so they added that bit on, and they didn't have this and they added that on, and then ultimately you end up with some poor soul somewhere, which was me back in the day when I was in corporate world. Pulling your hair out, trying to consolidate 1,001 bloody Excel spreadsheets to try and actually get some reports that make any sense. But then you're also trying to get it from someone and you're like, is this the right version?
Sounds a little bit like my house. My house has been, the people before me had extended it in so many different places, and the electric wiring doesn't make any sense and the heating doesn't make any sense. And the poor contractors have had to come in and gone, hold on a minute, we need to rewire this bit so that the fuse board makes sense, because this system and this system are different rooms, but they're all like, oh my God. So you basically come in, undo it and make it make sense so that it is still usable. It's got a longer lifespan for the business.
Exactly that. And if we need to go, so, there's options I do. So initially I can go in and do an audit, see what you've got, see what you're using, what you're not using. Because sometimes people buy the modules and then they realize that they don't actually need that one and they've never used it in the 20 years they've had it, but they're paying for it. And you're like, well, if you're paying for it and not using it,
maybe you could use this bit for that.
Exactly.
That element. And you don't need that whole bit that you're paying extra.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if there's any gaps. So for example, if they have bought a standalone piece of kit, then we use that, and we kind of see if we can fill that gap with the actual software they've got.
Yeah.
Or if we need to make a recommendation that actually they need to go down the route and get a new one, we'll support them with that. We'll actually help them establish what their requirements are. Because it's really funny how many businesses just assume they know what they need. And that's when they end up being sold to. So
They're vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
Because they get to that point where it's just not fit for purpose anymore. They're pulling their hair out. They're not able to see what they need to see. They're not able to make the decisions they need to make because they haven't got the functionality there. And some salesman comes along and shows them a shiny, shiny ERP and they're like, oh, this is it. This is the answer. And you're just like, it really fucking isn't. Like, if you haven't sat down and understood what your business is doing, what is your core functionality that you absolutely need, and also, like, what are your growth ambitions?
It sounds like me because I'm like that. Oh, I need Trello because Trello does this, and I need Notion, I need Asana, and I need all of these different. Like, no, I probably don't need any of them. I probably just use a Google Doc for most of what I need it for. But instead, I insist on paying. And we all get excited by new things that promise us the world, don't we?
Shiny. People like shiny stuff.
You do that. So you run fucking systems for big businesses, and that big businesses that we're talking about. You've been doing that for how long?
10 years.
And how long have you been doing it as a business owner yourself?
As a business owner since May 2020.
So was that just as COVID hit?
It was just sort of after. So I was initially doing it as, I guess, a temp, you'd say. And I was laid off at the beginning of COVID. Hilarious. Well, I say the beginning of COVID. We went into lockdown on the 23rd and it made me chuckle because the IT director at the firm I was with at the time told me on the 1st of April that they were basically culling all contractors. And I'm just literally sat there going, this is either a really shit day to do it or the worst April Fool ever. And he was like, oh shit, I didn't even realise that bit, Laura. And I was like, brilliant. Oh, no. So it's just a really shit day to do it. Thanks ever so much.
Oh my goodness. So you made redundant on April Fool's Day during lockdown.
Yep.
And then it was a case of, oh, fuck.
Yeah, pretty much.
What do I do now, right?
What do you do now? And actually those guys came back to me within 2 weeks, I think it was, and went, change plan. He's still available. Could you come back? And I was like, well, if I do it a slightly different way,
and charge them more, I hope.
Yeah.
And that kicked things off for you doing this for other companies.
Yeah.
And you've been doing that ever since.
Yeah.
Now, we will talk about the other things that you do, because I know you do coaching and also dog whispering, clearly. I think anyone who's watching this can see my dog now fawning over Laura and acting like he's never been loved before. You traitor. He doesn't do this with any of the guests, so you've clearly got a magic touch. He's proved that. But you had your first few years in business, you really flew, right?
Yeah.
It was incredibly successful.
It was the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I know how much of an outlier I am with that. And most people don't land on their feet like I did.
Yeah.
So like I say, I've been doing this sort of work for 10 years as my own business since 2020. So coming on for year 5 now, which blows my mind because I remember sitting in my office room at home deciding to do it and going, should I? And then obviously it worked and it was fine. And yeah, in those 10 years up until last year, which we'll go into, but it was literally back-to-back work. The longest I had out of a contract was 2 weeks. And that was by choice.
Yeah.
Because that was me going, you know what, I'm fucking knackered. I would love to do this work with you, but I need to get my head, I need a reset. I need a break.
Because it's
intense.
Yeah. I was going to say like mentally, it's very intensely draining.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly trying to find patterns and solutions and problem solving, which I know for someone like you is so much fun. Like you are absolutely one of those people that looks for problems to solve because it challenges your brain and gets you excited.
I love that
It's
stuff.
the same with your dog training. It's quite clear that a dog,
problem dog or whatever.
Dogs, but a dog has problems that you can solve. So you like to try and find the combinations that fix the problem. And that's something that I really relate to because I get bored. If there's not problems to solve, I get bored. Yeah. It's all too easy. I need that next challenge all the time. How did you, so those first 4 years, no problem, got all the clients, absolutely high flying.
Yep.
Lifestyle improved.
Finances improved. I was making investments. So when I started, I had 2 dogs. By the end of the last big contract, which was last year, I was up to 4. And then one suddenly passed away last April, which was really shit and broke me a little bit, can't lie. It was really sudden, really unexpected. And it was one of those that, like, you know, with hindsight, you can look back and go, you know what? I'm really, really glad she didn't suffer for a prolonged period of time because she was a German Shepherd. We think it was degenerative myopathy. So actually legs stopped working, basically. So on the Friday, she was fine. On the Sunday, her back leg stopped working. So I took her to the vets. They gave her an injection and she perked up a little bit. But on the Tuesday morning, her front legs had stopped working too. And that was when I had to say goodbye.
And that was in line alongside
literally
the business really taking a tumble in terms of the income you were getting. What do you think it was last year that made the big difference? Because I'm assuming it wasn't anything you did wrong. You weren't suddenly cancelled by the industry.
No, I wasn't cancelled, thank God. And if anything, you know, I've had people this year, it's been the weirdest thing actually, because like literally as soon as 2025 kicked in, I've had more conversations in January, and we're only on it's the 20th today? No, 21st, the day we're recording. I've had more conversations in January, and we're not even through the whole month yet, than I had throughout the entirety of 2024.
What do you think was the difference in 2024 that had such a impacted it so dramatically?
I wish I knew is the honest answer, but literally everyone I spoke to, because in the previous 10 years, I would have people harassing me. That sounds wrong, but in the nicest way. They'd be ringing me up going, we've got this, any chance? And I'm like, actually, I'm on this one at the minute. I want to see it through. And they would ring me every month almost. And there was always opportunities coming at me. And it was one of those, I'm doing this one. I'll be back, you know, if they can wait,
you could
whatever.
Pick and choose
literally
all of the projects. You could cherry pick your favourite ones, the clients you like to work with. And then last year, I was ringing them going, don't suppose you got anything? And literally everyone's like, it's a really bloody weird year, Laura. And I'm like, that doesn't feckin' help. It's a really weird year. It doesn't wash with my mortgage provider. It doesn't help with anything else. Like you're just suddenly going from, like you say, back to back, everything hunky-dory, making investments, saving away, having a lovely life, having moved to my dream home. So it coincided with you buying a home that financially stretched you.
Yeah. That wasn't scary when I bought it because I was in a contract.
Yeah.
And within 3 months of moving in, contract's gone.
Not to mention the fact that you've now got 5 dogs.
I've now got 5.
And they're big dogs.
They are
big
lumps.
dogs are not cheap to insure, to feed, to look after.
Correct.
That alone is a big outgoing on top of the big mortgage.
Yeah.
So while we're not playing our tiny little violins in sympathy for you because you've had it, you've had a very, you know, you've had that privilege and you know how, you recognise how lucky you are.
Yeah, God, yeah.
We both do, but for those 4 years you coasted quite comfortably.
Really
and
easily.
then you got a big
wake up call.
Yeah. Where do you think that you can credit that all to the industry was just weird, the economy was weird, or do you feel like there were things maybe that you weren't doing in 2022, 2023 that would have maybe impacted 2024 more positively?
I think as irritating as it is, I wish it was me because I could have changed that. Yeah. But literally every single person, like I even know recruiters who were laid off, who were specifically ERP recruiters. I know another who's now 3 days a week rather than full time. I know. Sorry, I'm being distracted because my boy's looking at me. It's just one of those. And I think there were so many weird factors last year as well. So you obviously had the UK election, you had the US election, you had various budgetary things. I've got contacts in Germany. They were sort of saying, don't know what the hell is going on this year, but no one can make a fucking decision. Like, what is...
Just pulling their belts in.
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of people pulling their belts in and trying to keep things as tight and as lean as they could. So rather than seeing working with someone like me as an investment for their business, they were seeing it as an expense, which isn't how it's been perceived otherwise. Yeah. And also some of the softwares are doing almost, sounds like I'm being discriminatory and bad to them. I don't mean to be, but they're doing almost a forced upgrade this year. Some of them, the previous versions are coming to the end of their life, and they're almost forcing people down a path of, you kind of have to go for this latest version,
right?
Or you're out on your ear.
So it's kind of done you a favour then, because
so
coming back.
There's a shed load of people now kind of kicking stuff off because that is coming into effect effectively at the beginning of April. So there's now a bunch of people out there going, oh, okay, we can't afford the additional cost of sticking on our old one. We need someone like you who can come in and help us and show us. Because that's the other thing as well, right? It's one of those, because I'm an external, I get to play the middle ground. So I've got the best interest of the business who's working with me at heart, but I will hold both sides to account. So whether that's a software provider or a partner or whatever, I will point out to them if they're steering them down the wrong path.
And you are brutally honest in the nicest way, because we all know that I love people that are brutally honest. You know exactly where you stand with those people. There's never any room for confusion.
If someone's got an ugly baby, I will tell them.
But, my God. We can tell you're not really a kid person. You're more of a dog person, right?
There's no such thing as an ugly dog.
I don't know, what are those Chinese crested ones? They're a bit odd.
They're odd, but they're still kind of endearing.
Sorry, any Chinese crested dogs that are listening. I need to quickly interrupt our chat to tell you about our brilliant sponsor. Running your own business takes courage, dedication, and hard work. And that's why over 100,000 small businesses and freelancers count on Kudos to protect what matters most. From professional indemnity and public liability to personal accident and income protection coverage, you'll only pay for the protection your business actually needs, with no unnecessary extras. In a world of rising prices, Kudos has kept premiums steady for 8 years running. Plus, with their price match guarantee, you'll always get the best value without compromising on quality or service. Kudos understands that your business is more than just your work. It's your passion, your livelihood, and your future. Their policies and award-winning service are designed to give you complete peace of mind, so you can focus on what you do best, running your business. Head to kudoscontractor.com to learn more and use code LEA10 at checkout to get 10% off your first policy, subject to eligibility. Now, back to the conversation. But how did it feel for you? Because we're so used to talking about the highs of business and seeing people, reflect on the shit times when they're out of them.
Yeah.
But you had some really good news this morning. You got a contract this morning. So that's for how long?
6 months minimum.
Brilliant. So we've already celebrated. We've already done a whoop, 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 because it's been the first contract you've had in a while.
Yeah, it's been the first long-term one. So I had a very small one in September, which was, so with ERP stuff, what you tend to find is that companies have their main scope of what they need to achieve. And then there's normally what I call the mythical beast of a phase 2, which most businesses never get round to.
Right.
Because they're effectively the nice to haves. They're not the essentials that they need to run the business, but they're the nice little bits that make it easier once the essentials are in.
Right.
But the problem with a phase 2 is that generally by the time the business is at the point of thinking about it, all the consultancy support that they've had and everything else has buggered off. Right. So I was really lucky that one of the partners contacted me because they had a small piece of phase 2 work in September for one of their clients. It was just a system enhancement. So it was a week, but it wasn't what I'm used to. I'm used to almost full-time hours constantly on it. So, I mean, that was a lovely bit of a, little breather.
But how did that, I can't imagine going from working really full on. You work hard, you do long hours. It's a lot of concentration, obviously with allowances for the dogs, but you're very tunnel visioned in focus, project, work hard, deliver it on time. You're so good with your clients.
Spot the ADHD hyperfocus.
But you've gone from that to I've got nothing to do.
Yeah.
How did that affect you and your confidence and your sort of day-to-day life? Because I can't really imagine not being go, go, go all the time. It's a really big change of pace.
100%. And also really, it sounds stupid, but when I moved into the house, it needed new windows and doors. Right. So when I first moved in, it was drafty as hell. The actual front door, you couldn't open it from the outside. It was brilliant. That's useful.
I can get out, but no one can get in.
Yeah. It's like extra security measure. But I had to spend a small bloody fortune on replacing all of that. And again, it was one of those moments of, okay, I was almost delighted that it was happening when it did because I was out of contract. I'm like, well, thank God I'm not dealing with all the banging and the workmen and everything else when I'm trying to do client calls. But it was a lot of money that actually in hindsight, when you're thinking, shit, if I'd have known I was going to be out for this long, I wouldn't have done the doors and windows last year. I'd have waited. I'd have had another chilly winter.
Yeah.
But I'd have had that money in my arse pocket and it would have been breathing space because none of us thought that it was going to be that sort of a year. And there's so many people who do what I do that are, I'm in contact with on LinkedIn and places like that. And they're all just like, I think I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and go and get a proper job or whatever. And you're
Did
like,
that cross your mind?
Did it cross my mind? Yes and no.
I mean, it would be very difficult with the dogs.
Yeah, that's the no bit.
Yeah.
Because my dogs, they're not Bronson. They're not the sort of dog I could either take with me or put in daycare. As you know, I only take on what I affectionately call the nutters with issues.
Yeah. The ones families won't adopt.
Yeah.
Or anyone without dog expertise will adopt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can't be flung in kennels or daycare or anything like that or taken with me. So
I've never put him in that. I'm a not a clingy mum in terms of my son, but I'm a clingy dog mum. He's my original,
giving him daggers.
He was my first baby. He was my first baby, and I learned to be unselfish with my wants and needs with him. And he was my little, he's my emotional support animal. Who's betrayed me today. So what did you do? You had all of that time free. You had obviously the dogs to invest your time with. But how did you keep yourself busy when you've gone from working 40, 50 hours a week, or if not more, to I've got no work to do? What did you do instead?
What did I do instead? I viewed finding my next contract almost as a full-time job.
Right.
And
Which
actually
meant doing what?
Which meant contacting recruiters, making connections with people on LinkedIn, having conversations with people, and just being the annoying person going, hi, remember me? Still available, anything in. But also that's when I decided to do the coaching certification, because it was like, well, if I'm not being used in a work capacity, how can I keep my brain active? What else can I bring to the party? And actually knowing that, initially I was a bit wary about offering dog training as a service as well. And it was actually thanks to Hayley Duggan, who I know from LinkedIn, who is the reason I have Reggie Malinois. It's all her fault. And she was like, you are more than qualified. Look at your dogs. Look at the dogs they were before they joined you and the dogs they are today. She's like, you don't need an accreditation. You've got the lived experience of transforming these dogs. Like, you can help your bog standard average pet home with their issues. And I was like, okay. And then it was like, well, if I'm doing that, then actually maybe some of the coaching skills, would play out and help with dog training, because a lot of it, the dogs pick up really quickly. The time is actually spent on training the bloody humans.
That doesn't surprise me.
Because they just get into habit, right? And, the amount of them, I'm like, relax your arm, because they're like holding it up by the chin almost, because they're expecting the dog to pull and be a dickhead. But the dog's now walking very happily, but they're just on autopilot because they've spent the last however long
being yanked
panicked and being dragged around. But also knowing that the coaching stuff would play out well with my ERP clients when I got those going again as well, because so much of the issues that you get in ERP is actually change. It's the change management piece, because project management's great and that's how you get shit done. But if you genuinely want it to stick and you genuinely want it to be adopted, you've got to deal with the fears that people are feeling and get them on that journey with you as to why the business is doing it. Because people, if that isn't explained to them, they will inevitably just recreate what they've always done, because that's all they've known. I mean, I even had one who tried to tell me that they needed to create all of their employees as suppliers on the system to pay their expenses. I was like, but you have the HR module of the system, which has an expenses module. You don't need to do that anymore. What you're telling me is you need to pay expenses. What we now need to look at is how we can best do that in your new system, not how you've always done it. And if the bosses and the powers that be aren't actually telling their staff, we want you to make improvements here. We want you to give us stuff we haven't had before, because that's why they're making that multi-million-pound investment. They don't just want the same shit in a shiny new system. They want better. And if the staff don't know that, they will just do what they've always done because that's what they believe their job is.
I mean, we're the same as entrepreneurs or business owners as well, aren't we? We get so comfortable with what we are already doing, even if what we're doing is difficult and making it unnecessarily complicated for ourselves,
100%.
which we are all guilty of at some point. Yeah. If we don't know a better system,
you don't know what you don't know.
I'm really guilty of this. I will try something new and I'll like certain features, but then I will go back to what's familiar because it's easier. Even if it's not actually easier, if I dedicated more time to learning the new thing to work it properly, it would be more efficient. But it will take me so long to learn the new thing that
that's it, right?
I can't be bothered. I'll just carry on struggling. It's fine.
And that's exactly the same for the corporate employees, right? Starting a new system can sometimes feel to them that they no longer know how to do their day job. And if they've been in that business for 20 years or however long, suddenly feeling like the new person all over again.
It's like going from PC to Mac.
Right. Or even and I was saying to someone else this morning, like, it's one of those that you almost have to think about it. Like when you the first time you ever sat in a car, your first ever driving lesson.
Yeah.
Right. And you're sitting in there and you're thinking, right, okay, key in the ignition, seatbelts on, and the mirror's in the right bloody place.
Yeah.
Okay. So foot on the clutch, turn the key. Oh God, the engine's making a noise. Okay, shit, right. Okay. So foot on the clutch again, into first gear,
thing, right?
Find the bike point, let go of the handbrake. Oh my God, the damn thing's moving. Shit. Okay. I'm actually driving. Fuck. Right. And you have that. But then a year down the line,
it's on autopilot.
You're 100% on autopilot. You're up and down the bloody motorway. You've got the tunes blaring. You're singing your head off.
I get to places and I go,
how did I get here?
How did I get here? I can't even remember driving. And I've completely forgotten because it's so on autopilot.
Exactly that. And it's the same with using a system. But like muscle memory is a thing and people know where to click and they know what to do. Even if it's the jankiest, clunkiest, shittest system in existence that's well out of date, people cling onto it like a comfort blanket because it's familiar. And that new thing and trying to explain to them that this is going to make your life better, that's the tricky bit. It's the hearts and minds bit almost.
Trying to teach my nan how to use an iPhone or trying to teach my mum's husband. Like, you can have accounting systems. You don't have to write everything down in a book.
Oh, bless.
You know? But I know that that's their generation and that's how things were done. And I completely respect that. But it is, as they say, it's hard to teach old dogs new tricks. Not in your experience because you are an expert. I love how that just worked so seamlessly there. But it is when you get used to things because we are not comfortable with being bad at things.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly that. And especially as adults.
When was the last time you started something brand new that you sucked at and had to learn from scratch?
Yeah.
It feels really uncomfortable to be crap at something.
Yeah.
And it's probably held me back from I'd quite like to learn a new a language and a language other than sarcasm and English, right? But I am so insecure about saying the wrong thing and doing it badly because I'm so used to being so good at speaking English and never having to worry that the idea of being crap at speaking Thai or French or Spanish and people misunderstanding me and thinking, she's shit at this. Like, I just don't do it. And so how have you, like, when you made that transition to going out as a consultant on your own, did you have any doubts about yourself as a business owner? Because obviously you knew the thing that you needed to sell, the service that you offered. You knew that like the back of your hand. Where were the bits that you struggled with?
As silly as it sounds, the bits I struggled with the most, I think, as basic as it sounds, was pricing and actually knowing my worth and my value. And I think that came from the fact, like I said, I'd been doing it as a temp for years anyway. And when you're doing it just as a temp, you don't get the consultant day rates. You just don't.
No.
And again, you just...
do, but an agency takes a nice big chunk of it.
The agency takes a lovely chunk, and fair play to them because they're obviously opening the doors for you and all the rest of it, which is great. And recruiters definitely have their place in the world.
Offend the agencies.
But recruiters absolutely have their place.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, I wouldn't have got the contract I got this morning, actually, had it not been for a recruiter who I had a lovely chat with via LinkedIn last week.
Yeah.
So, you know, they absolutely have their place, but it's a different style of recruiter when you're going through a specialist in an ERP world than it is through a generic temp agency kind of a vibe. Do you know what I mean?
So it's not Ethan with his highlighted spiky blonde hair and blue suit.
And it's when you've kind of come from that and then you kind of go, ooh, you think I can earn that? Okay. Yeah. And that feels like a massive step up. Now I'd be like, I'm not doing it for that. Like, you need to up it a wee bit.
So how much, and I'm not asking for specific figures, but like in percentage increase or how many times, how much did it go up within like that first 6 months or a year? Or how did you know when it was time
nearly doubled?
Nearly doubled.
Yeah.
And that was your day rate nearly doubled.
Yeah.
And what about since?
Since I've... just through choice, I've almost kept it at the same level because, and again, I know I've got in the back of my head, I've got the lovely Donna Elliott, who I know is part of the community too, going, I'm just like, oh, it's enough. And she's like, you're worth more than enough.
I get this though, because I had the same situation with the LinkedIn training and with the community as well. People, you could charge more, more. And while I know what I do is worth it, I want it to be accessible to the types of people I want to work with.
Yeah.
And when I was doing the LinkedIn training, I had got to a price point where people were happily paying it. And I was really enjoying the people that I was working with. Yeah. But I felt unaligned, not because I didn't believe that what I did was worth that money, because I did. And I had the proof. People were getting the value from it. They were getting the clients. Absolutely. It was working.
Yeah.
But because I knew that the people who needed my help the most, who would benefit the most, were not people that could afford that.
Yeah.
And when I started the community, I was determined to create something that was, in inverted commas, a low ticket.
Yeah.
Because the people I knew I really wanted to help were the people at the beginning of the journey or who needed that extra support, that community help, who didn't have it all figured out yet.
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to help the people that I was 5 years ago when I first started out. And I still am now. I'm still figuring it out. Those were my targets. And it wasn't about how much they earned. It was how much support they needed and how much education and how much they would benefit from what I was doing. And it doesn't matter. It's not about money mindset. I'm not worth £1 million pounds a year. I don't want to have an offer that is so much. Because it's so limiting with.
And it's one of those that I know for one of my old clients, when I left them, I actually had a conversation with a lady in procurement who was like, you need to charge more. And I was like, why do you say that? Like, she's like, because you're leaving. I'm like, yeah. She's like, they're having to hire 4 people to cover what you did. And she's like, you weren't charging 4 people's worth of person.
Yeah. I mean, that does make, and it was conversations with people like that made me put up my prices. Yeah. And I kept having those conversations, but at some point you have to decide that is it money? Is it impact? What is the thing that I'm driven by? And I'm sure the companies would pay you more because you're working with companies that have got those kinds of budgets. When you're working with like individuals, like with the coaching clients, like with the dog training, if you price that so high that you were only working with like people with tons of money, it wouldn't feel needs right. That help.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. And with the dog training stuff,
poor, a bad dog is a bad dog. Exactly. You need the expert, whether you're throwing thousands of pounds at an expert or 50 quid an hour at an expert, they still need help with their dog. Yeah. And the dog deserves that help.
That's exactly my point.
And it's having that guidance of what the impact you want to have is.
Yeah. And that's exactly the stance I've done with the dog training. For me, it's the fact that I know I can help these people. I know I've got proof now of, I think there's been at least 10 of them through the doors who have been genuinely like, this is a different dog. What have you done to my dog? Yeah. And I know I've been able to help them, but I've also made a point of not doing it at a price point that feels icky to me, I guess, because I want to help the dog at the end of the day. It's not really about the human because there are so many dogs in rescues.
Do that kind of thing for free anyway, wouldn't you?
Pretty much. But it's like, you know, there are so many dogs.
You still have to pay.
So many dogs that end up in rescue through no fault of their own And a lot of it is either poorly researching the breed or just falling in love with a puppy and then not realizing what it's going to turn into. But, you know, I think one of the factors with many dogs that isn't spoken about enough is, you know, as much as I don't agree with like people going, oh, there's no such thing as a bad dog, it's just bad owners. No. Genetics of the animal, certain dogs and certain breeds have been bred to perform a task. It's like you will see videos on TikTok and whatever of like an 8-week-old border collie herding sheep.
Yeah.
Not because it's been taught how to do it, but it's just part of its DNA. It knows what to do.
You see the same with children. My son was, you know, all of his toys were like gender neutral until he started going to a local playgroup, and the first thing he did was toddled straight towards a box full of cars, and for the next 3 years he was car obsessed. Yep. I'd never bought him a toy car. There was no conditioning or pushing from me, but he'd gone to the cars, not the dolls. And that was just the way it is. And dogs, you know, there is a certain amount of...
There is, but it's actually working with that,
nurture.
Working with the genes of the dog and the breed of the dog and actually fulfilling what it needs as that particular species.
It's fascinating how you've just got this brain that spots problems and then finds solutions. And do you think that's like a neurodiverse thing? Because I find that I see patterns, but my patterns, not in terms of things like ERP systems, that would like data and systems and anything remotely technical, and my brain is instantly fried. Like it would just go, nope, absolutely not.
Walk away.
This is why I have tech experts in the business, because I couldn't possibly manage it myself. But when it comes to like business problems, and I'm like, well, this is the thing that you're struggling with, and this is the result it's having, and this is what you want to happen. Why don't we try this as this?
Yeah,
and I love that. Do you think that's a neurodiverse thing?
It may well be, because I've had exactly that so many times with clients.
Yeah.
And literally they look at you and go, oh my God, you're a fucking genius. And you're like...
And it's to you, it feels so
it's
obvious.
The most obvious thing in the bloody world. It's like, how did you not see that?
Yeah, I find that. And so you see the same thing with dogs.
Yeah.
You just instantly know.
Yeah.
And I mean, it goes to show that you've got something innate in you that dogs respond to, because quite honestly, my dog has never abandoned me like this.
But like even 7-year-old me, if I was like, I remember our neighbours had an anxious dog. She was a collie cross called Annie. And like the owners had kind of said to my parents, you know, just she's not really a fan of kids or whatever else. No one had had this conversation with me. And they came out of their house one day and I'm literally sat cross-legged on the floor outside their back door gate, just having a chat with Annie. We were having a lovely time, just like Bronson and I are right now.
See,
Annie's like this with me. Yeah. And they came up and were like,
I'm like that
she doesn't
with animals,
do that with
and
kids.
so is my son. And I think it's something about your like calm energy or something like that they can sense you're not a danger to them, and they're softer with you. It's beautiful to see. But he's obviously, you know,
even if you have called him a traitor several times.
No, it's okay. I can deal with it. It's weird recording without like having him to stroke. But my hands feel like I don't know what to do with my hands. So in terms of like where you are with the business now, you got the contract this morning. Yep. So hooray, next 6 months are sorted. The dog babies can be fed.
They can.
What is your plan long term, sort of looking ahead? Because you've obviously discovered this real passion for the dog training. Do you have any kind of insight as to what that looks like in the future? Like, will the systems thing be left behind? Will there be a business built around
Part of me thinks, so, I mean, Ian Dempsey knows this.
Oh, right. This is an exclusive.
I guess so. Part of me thinks that maybe I could build what is my current ERP business into more of an agency model and have more me's out doing the me work.
Right. I love that.
Because obviously when it's just you hit capacity very quickly. But ultimately the dream, and I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, so it definitely means it's going to have to happen, is to bugger off to Italy.
Ooh. With all the dogs?
With all the dogs.
Right.
And buy a vineyard.
Ooh.
That's going to be a producing vineyard. I don't know. In my head, it's going to be Prosecco because I want to call it Fizz Farm.
Well, I love it.
So I can have my crazy rescue crew.
Right.
And I can just make Prosecco, and I can employ people to make the Prosecco because I only know how to drink it.
All you need to do is add some cheese in there, and that's like
yeah, but I'm vegan,
line.
So that doesn't work for me.
Oh.
Yeah. So, you know, doing the Prosecco, I can pay the people, it can pay me enough Me and the dogs can have a lovely time.
I mean, it sounds like a dream life. I would, so just sort of we've covered so much ground, and it's been such a random conversation, but I've really enjoyed it. If there's a bit of advice that you could look back and say, hey, Laura, and sort of 2023, 2022 Laura. So at the beginning, but not right at the beginning. If you do this or change this, things are going to be a little bit easier for the next few years. Yeah. What would you say?
Don't take the contract where they negotiate you down.
Right.
Because I've had that, and I took those contracts initially, like you were saying earlier, because I didn't have the reserves I had this last year to get me through and whatever else. And it was like, oh shit, I'm out of work. I need to take something. But the companies that negotiated me down and all the rest of it were micromanaging as fuck.
Oh, it's so true though. It's the ones that argue price that you go, I don't want to, like at the time and at the beginning, you will absolutely take contracts and work with clients that will undercut you or like talk you down on price. I definitely accepted prices that I never should have accepted. When I started my transcription business, I was working for like really, really low. It was embarrassingly low, but I didn't need that income to survive. And then it started having to go up when it was like my sole income. So I can't possibly survive on that. But you do realise, and I hate to say it because it's such a cliche thing people say, but the more a client is paying, the easier it is to get the money out of them. And they are much less bothered by micromanaging
and
you.
they're much more inclined to just let you do the job they've brought you in to do, because that's why they've hired you.
And are you like that? If you outsource anything, are you like that? Because I know that because I've got clients that pay me a lot, or have had clients, obviously that was the last business, they would hire me, pay me a big sum, and then just let me get on with it and do the thing and not constantly harass me or bother me. It was just like, crack on, get on with it. And I never had to chase them for money, and I didn't have to like negotiate anything. Now I'm that person. I hire other experts. I'm like, if I'm hiring you, it's because you're better at the thing than I am.
100%.
So why am I going to be going, well, actually,
you should do it this way,
or change that, or change it. Like, no. The way you think it's supposed to be done
is how it's supposed to be done. You have to hire the
right people that you trust.
Exactly
and I've made that mistake. I have made mistakes and probably should have managed people a little bit closer. But they weren't the right person for the job. My email marketer, I'm just like, crack on. You do your thing, because I know you're going to do it better than I ever could. That's why I've hired you. And I learned so much from watching him and how he does it. But I still don't want to do it myself. No. He's still always going to do it better. He's an expert. So do you find that that's exactly reflected with your...
100%. And like, you know, it's things like the accountant and that sort of stuff, you know, and I'm just like, I haven't got accountancy training. I haven't have a bloody clue. Like, if that's what I need to do, that's what I need to do. If you need me to say that's okay, then I'll say it's okay.
So how do you manage to find the people that you trust to be that hands-off? Because I feel like at some stage I'm going to get burned because I'm so trusting with my team that now I don't think that the team that I have would do this. I would never say that because they're all exceptional. They've been with me a long time and I really trust them. But I could easily be burned by that because I'm too trusting.
But I guess for me, I've gone down the route mostly of the people I work with in that regard who support me have been people who've been recommended to me by people that I know and trust. And, you know, if it was just Bill down the pub or whatever, I'm not going to go off that recommendation. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if it's someone who I know does a similar thing to me or has got similar experiences and wants to do well and wants to build their own business and they're saying, you know what, this person's a really good person to work with, great.
And that just goes to sort of prove why having like communities and memberships where you are building those networks of trust is so valuable, because you just never know when a referral is going to come in. Like literally this morning, someone said in the community, does anyone know a good conveyancing solicitor? And I was like, yeah, my mortgage broker recommended one to me. Can't remember his name. Immediately got a recommendation of someone I trust who I've previously worked with who are sensational. And they were fantastic during my house sale. And, you know, they've capitalized off the trust that I've built with this person. It's so, I mean, it works so well. I don't think I've ever gone into the community and said, does anyone know someone, like insert profession? And there's not been a brilliant number of recommendations come back, and I've had loads of options, or someone in there does a thing and I can hire them. For the last 2 years, I don't think I've hired anyone that that isn't
outside of it.
that isn't in the community. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Laura, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been
Thank you
so
for
great
having
to chat
me.
to you at some point.
Thank you for having me, Bronson.
Bronson is going to be sobbing when you leave now. He's going to be pining for you all evening.
Shall I just get you in the car with me? She won't know it's fine.
I've been gaping a hole in my life without him. It's been such a treat to chat with you and to finally meet you in person. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Supporting small business owners is my biggest passion, and that's what my membership community, the HoLT, is all about. Inside the HoLT are more than 150 masterclasses from experts in every business skill you could ever want, and we add more every single month. There are also sales clinics, tech clinics, wellbeing support and advice, and discounts on a huge range of software and services. But it's so much more than just trainings and resources. Everyone inside the HoLT shares their years of knowledge and experience generously, with kindness and without judgment. They're super active, the chat channels are buzzing, and it's like having 600 business cheerleaders in your pocket, willing you to succeed and helping you wherever they can. And we offer all of this and much more at an extremely low price, because we know that budgets are tight when you're bootstrapping a business. The HoLT is a kind, inclusive and non-judgmental place where everyone knows that working together is the fastest way to succeed, and it makes it a whole lot more fun. We would love for you to join us. You can check out the full details on the-holt.com. Or if communities aren't really your vibe and you just want access to the hundreds of expert masterclass recordings with a combined value of more than £10,000, you can access the Vault right now for just £20 per month. The Vault is all the masterclasses with none of the chat or distractions, just pure value. Visit the-holt.com/vault to sign up and start binging your way through brilliant trainings from leading experts.